So LURS, that's a long-range surveillance detachment. Typically, it's a infantry company with scouts attached to a military intelligence company. So the battalion itself is combined into LURS. And most of the time, to get in those units, at the bare minimum, you have to be airborne qualified. But the majority are guys from Ranger Battalion. They have some SF guys in there as well. And being a brand new soldier, getting exposed to that level of knowledge and experience, it was, overwhelming to say the least. But at the same time, I think a lot of that laid the foundation for me being able to cope and do my job in Iraq, you know.
Okay.
And yeah, so I did my year in Korea, and I succumbed to messing up over there in Korea and got my first Article 15 out there, and it's like one of those duty stations that's it's real easy to get those kind of stuff. When we first flew into Korea, the sergeant who's doing the in brief for us, she told us, she's like, "How many people here are E5?" And there's like, a bunch of people raise their hands, and she's like, "And y'all want to leave here E6, right?" And they're all like, "Yeah, of course." She's like, "All right, I'm gonna give you the secret. The easiest way to leave Korea an E6 is to come here E7."
uh,
And she wasn't joking.
yeah.
Back when I was in Korea, this would have been 2005.
Hmm.
They still had Kim Jong Il as the dictator over there in North Korea, and Korea was still in this like weird limbo kind of situation where like due to the legality, we're still technically at war. It's only like a ceasefire or something like that, and they have all these insane rules, over there, and they you have the curfews, you have to pass limits that are very restrictive, and all these kind of things going on, and that's basically what I ended up doing was taking what they call a weather pass, or whether
Uh-oh.
or not you get caught pass.
And the
And
weather was
everything,
bad for you.
yeah, weather was bad for me. Yeah, so I got that, and when I came to the unit Bravo Company 112, I'm showing up after being in the army almost 2 years, and I'm an E1 because over in Korea they don't play. So I went straight from E3 to E1. Had
Mm,
to do my 30 days extra duty, loss of rank, loss of pay, all that.
yeah.
And I was just like kind of despondent from all of that, and you're starting to get jaded with the military and all these kind of things. And yeah, there's personal responsibility involved, but you're like, holy crap, like they hit me hard just for going taking a weekend pass. Like what the hell?
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
it happens, and
yeah,
unfortunately, you got caught where but it happens. I mean, that's why it's the weather pass, and like you
yeah,
said, bad weather for you.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
but yeah, so now you're at Hood. You're in the battalion. You sign into Bravo. You get assigned to Bravo Company.
Yep.
So tell us about your experience with the train up, JRTC, like the pre-deployment stuff, because you were there for the entire time.
Yeah, yeah. So I get to Bravo, and I get put in. I want to say it was third platoon, and we had Sergeant Feely, Sergeant Reynolds, Sergeant First Class Reynolds, and it was my first experience being in a mechanized infantry company. Everything that I'd done train up previous, with LURS was all light infantry,
Yeah.
and in LURS I was on the heavy weapon squad, dealing with 240s and 50 cals, all this kind of stuff. So it was an interesting mesh there,
Uh-huh.
and I it was kind of really my first experience going to, once you go to the regular army unit, you start to see different types of people. Like there's a different culture and attitude and stuff like that. It's one of the reasons that later on in the military I ended up going airborne and getting into airborne unit in Italy. You have this culture of like everyone volunteered to be here, they want to be here, so there's kind of less negativity going around, because at the end of the day, even though you still have to deal with a lot of crap, you're like, okay, we all want to be here at the end of the day, right? And there's a lot of people in the regular army that they get in, and as soon as they get in, they're like, oh, I don't like this, and I'm gonna make this hell for everyone around me, you know. So that kind of you start to see a lot of that going on, and you're like, they're having issues in our platoon. It's one of the reasons I named my book about this deployment, Troublemakers, because that was the name of our platoon, and everyone in the platoon had at least one Article 15, and by the time we went off to Iraq, I had gotten my second Article 15, so I was I was in good company, if you will.
Okay. So, as a
Yeah,
member of the troublemakers, and but anything stick out from the train up? I mean, we were doing a lot of training. We're in the field a lot. Of course, still doing gunneries. I mean, that's a huge difference
yeah,
because a
yeah.
qualifying with a 50 cal or 240 Bravo is a whole lot different than actually doing a whole gunnery tables.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of this too. You're coming from a lower enlisted point of view, and you don't have that oversight or understanding of everything that's going on above you. So, on the ground, most of us were just, talking about this is a complete shit show. What's going on? And you're watching them pull in officers and NCOs that are, have no combat experience or little combat experience, or they don't even have combat MOSs. Like for one of the gunnery tables, I think they pulled in LT for a hot minute, who was a finance guy, and they have him out there trying to like, mess with the Bradley until he like turned it back to the tower, and they pulled him off the range, right? And so you're just like, holy crap, everything seems to be going in every different direction. There's a lot of misinformation every single day. There's, so the guys who are in my position, we just feel like we're getting pulled left, right, center, and, told to hold squat, and then all of a sudden everything's going crazy. And so at the end of the day, we just kind of like, okay, grin, bear it, and go through it. And when we get to Iraq, maybe this will all settle out.
Yeah, which is a shame because I mean, it really just goes to it shows you the difference of platoon leadership and company leadership, where maybe telling you, hey, there all this is going on because we're under strength, and
Yeah,
I mean, remember both deployments, and very vividly for the first deployment where we went to the replacement company. They grabbed the first three male officers and they're like, okay, don't matter what your MOS is, now you're going to be an infantry officer
yeah,
because it was short. So, but sharing that information is important. So, it's great to hear your side of the, hey, being a junior enlisted, doing the grunt work, but yet not really know what's going on. You're like you said, you grin and bear it, and you just keeping one foot in front of the other.
yeah, yeah. And there's that thing too where you don't really have like a mission to latch onto, because that mission either A is changing every day, or it's not being disseminated to you. So you're just like, okay, what are we going to be doing in Iraq? And nobody knows. and
Yeah.
you're just like, okay, are we gonna go over there and fight people? Or are we gonna train up, Iraqi army guys? Or are we gonna be doing fob security? This, that. Like nobody knows,
Mm.
right? So it's the idea that you can't you can't prepare for absolutely everything all the time, right? You
Yeah.
can kind of say, okay, well, if we had this mission mindset, like we could get in this kind of planning and this kind of like routine and things like that. If it's this, okay, at least people can prepare for it this way. But with that lack of direction, I think a lot of people were getting really anxious and really high strung prior to the deployment. And I think that is kind of why a lot of the incidents pre deployment happened. Because we had a
Mm.
lot of, UCMJ going on prior to deployment. And I remember being in that like state of mind where you're just constantly anxious and constantly, in this like high adrenaline state of being, you know?
Well, and we don't have to name names and we don't have to bring up everything, but if you
Yeah.
think about it, you also had a first sergeant who was relieved.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, yes, Bravo Company was definitely leading the way and for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
JRTC, I mean, now that was very straightforward. It was a kinetic fight. It was
Yeah.
a force on force. Anything stick out or anything from JRTC you want to talk about, share, or was it just kind of minutia of the box?
Uh, really for me, it was mostly minutia of the box. We for that one, I remember being upset because they took me off the heavy weapons squad and had me drive a Bradley, and I had no Bradley training or anything like that, and I was expecting to be doing those ops with all these people that I had started to build bonds with,
Hmm.
back in the rear, and then suddenly at the end of out of nowhere they're like, hey, the Bradley driver for this platoon can't drive, so you're now a Bradley driver, and you're just like, I I don't know how to drive this thing. Like, what am I, what, you know? And so you get in there, and then that makes like the expectations also kind of like disappointing as well, because you're like, okay, I want to be out there doing cool guy stuff, and now I'm stuck in this Bradley just like driving around in the hot Louisiana humidity.
Yeah.
You're just like, okay, this sucks,
You're
right?
getting the taxi service. You're getting the guys. You drop ramp, and you're still
Yeah,
stuck in that thing.
yeah. And then breaking track out in that mud and having to deal with that and all that stuff. So yeah, it was a interesting experience, and it definitely made me not appreciate the Bradleys. but but
But someone's got to do it, and
yeah,
you did the job,
absolutely,
so you learned, and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So we get
And
done with
so from that
JRT.
point, I fought to be dismounted as much as possible. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, you know. The only thing that stuck out to me at the end of that, which kind of like foreshadowed, what a lot of guys who are lower enlisted I've heard echo later, is I remember at the end of the rotation there was like some female soldier. She got like an award for making donuts or something like that, just something silly, and you're just like sitting there like, what is this? Somebody's getting an Arcom or an AM for donuts, and then like as far as like the awards and things that were handed out for all the guys who were doing the grunt stuff and all these ops and stuff, it really seemed like we weren't getting any recognition. It was just kind of like, okay, well, I remember that phrase being repeated. It's like, oh, what, you won an award for doing your job? And you're like, well, isn't that what she got? Like, I don't know, but there was kind of that helped build like small pieces of like resentment with the lower enlisted guys.
Yeah, I mean, awards is always a point of friction, and
Yeah,
uh, definitely, it sounds like we'll talk about it a little bit later as we get into the deployment, but yeah, it's always a point of friction. I mean,
yeah. And
even
I'm
till
not talking
this
too
point.
about me personally. Like I don't feel like I personally did anything that deserves, like um, a crazy award or anything like that. There definitely were people that did things that deserved far more recognition than what they got, you know.
Yeah,
But like I said, it just seemed that I've heard this from everybody who was in that went through this with me and has talked about it later. You know, it seemed like if you were E5 or below, it was just like, okay, yeah, you don't get anything. If you're E6 and above, you're gonna get an automatic Bronze Star with Valor.
yeah. I mean, that was a common theme, and
Yeah,
maybe the rank structure was a little different at that which you got what, but yes, that's a common theme of. I mean, hence why later on, I mean, we're talking about many years down the road, they
yeah,
actually started doing. Some units actually started doing MSMs because they were
mm,
tired of giving bronze stars to everybody.
yeah,
So, but yeah, so all right, so we get back from JRTC, we get out the door. Well, before we get out the door, you lose a first sergeant. You guys that probably had to hit or sting a little bit. So now we get to Kuwait. We know where we're going. You get a new first sergeant. So pick it up from there. Uh, that's
yeah.
pick it up from your arrival to Warhorse at the dark of night.
I mean, it was a cool ride. We get into Fob Warhorse. We rode in on Chinooks, and they flashed off the flares, and we're seeing some stuff, little pieces of action going out there, and uh, I remember one of the NCOs. He I don't remember his name, but he had bad like flight sickness, and so he
Hmm.
threw up in a bag while we're going. So for me, I was just kind of like, oh, this is kind of interesting and cool, you know. And we get there, and it's still more chaos. It's still more anxiety, stress. No idea of a mission. No idea of like what we're gonna do. Like you said, we got a new first sergeant. We don't know this guy, from anybody. We're just like, okay. And quick. Also in Kuwait, we had one of our guys got a Article 15 for like basically back talking an officer while we were out there, and it's one of those situations where the guy just couldn't read the room, and it's like, hey, you've got a bunch of dudes here who are on like high tension, high stress, high anxiety, and you're trying to push in a way that we're not really like responding to in a good way right now, and everything's kind of crazy. So yeah, when we got there, one I think it was the first week or two we're doing our rip ins and rip outs. The left seat, right seat rides, and Sergeant Haas was my squad leader. And he comes up and he's like, "Hey, we're going to be going out on the first patrol, out here in Bakuba for our left seat, right seat." And First Sergeant Kalela's coming with us, and it was me, Sergeant Haas, First Sergeant Kalela, Nance, Joe Davis. He had never driven a vehicle before in his life, and now he's driving a Humvee. And we're all going out with the fourth ID guys, and it was supposed to be a simple cordon mission in Bakuba. And while we're out there, some sort of like explosion happens out in the middle of the city, and like the Iraqi army guys that we were with, or I'm sorry, let me back it up. Before we leave, the Humvee that I was in, apparently there was a casualty in that Humvee before we left. So the windshield was like broken out, and there was like blood particles and stuff like that, and they'd like
Wow.
barely cleaned this Humvee out, and then they're like, "Yeah, a guy died here last night, and you're gonna sit in his seat." You're just like, "Holy shit!" Like,
Yeah.
you know. And so we're going out doing that, and while we were out there, we had a small arms attack with some sort of explosion go on in the middle of the city. And I remember the Iraqi army was out there just like shooting at the palm groves. And the guy who was the 240 gunner from 4th ID in our Humvee, he's up there rocking the 240. And then we just see like a mortar come out and hit one of the Iraqi army guys. And just, he's gone. And like it was at that point that I was like, okay, all of this is real. And like even my team, at the time team leader Nance turned around. He's like, "Is it real for you now?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, this is real."
Yeah. That you talk about a first day in sector, and as you're saying, you're doing your left seat, right seat ride, and a
Yeah,
guy got turned into the pink mist in front of you,
yeah,
and you get told, "Oh, hey, someone just died in this vehicle yesterday," and let's
yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah.
So how'd that
And
change your perspective?
well, I think for me, especially like later on down the road, I have a better disposition about these things because I would always like tell myself like you signed up for this, this is what you wanted. you know you could have done anything. You could have listened to your family and joined the Air Force, or done something that was less combat intense, but you made this decision. So anything that happens is kind of like your responsibility, right?
Hmm.
And at that point, when I'm seeing all this stuff going on, I'm like, okay, this is the test that I wanted. And as long as I don't freak out and like run away or lock up, I feel like I'm accomplishing my goal. Like I'm going through that like baptism of fire.
Yeah. Like you said, this is the challenge you wanted, and the universe responded and gave you exactly what you asked for.
Yeah, yeah, you know. And from that point, yeah, everything was really in I would say until we established Bone Disney, everything was chaos. There was, everything from you're going to do route security to we're going to have some guys do some tower guard occasionally. We're going to have dudes go out there and support EOD. We're going to, it just seemed like every weird detail mission that they wanted to come up with, that's what we were doing, right? We had half the platoon split a couple weeks after we got into Iraq, and my half was the one that went with the Delta Company with the tankers, and the other half of the company was at the embassy in Bakuba, or was it Tahrir or Bakuba?
Hmm.
But yeah, they were out there in the embassy, and that's when Bird got shot, Lieutenant Ebarb got shot, and we're it's this weird situation because you have guys that you just spent all this time with bonding, and you're hearing about things that are happening and you can't respond to them because you're out doing tank missions with tankers, and in some cases doing dismounted missions with these tankers from tanks, and you're just like, we have no clue what's going on. We're just, every day is something new. Every day is completely different, and it's, you just have to be ready to do anything and everything at once.
Yeah, and especially with and I don't know what you were told from the fourth ID guys, but when you initially got to theater and hey, everything's been cool. We just kind of go and do some mosque monitoring, and yeah, we've got people here and there, but overall, yeah. And then as soon as we get there, all of a sudden there's like this uptick in violence. And then,
Yeah.
like you were saying, we had hard
Well,
sites you had to
we were
guard, but
told that they had captured Al Zakari, who was the leader of Al Qaeda at the time in our sector, and from that I do remember First Sergeant Colella being like, "This is going to cause some shit."
so chaos, you guys are trying to figure out life and you brought it up. So the orders come out. All right, we're gonna establish combat outposts in the city. So Bone Disney, kind of
Yeah,
talk us through some of that, or talk us through where maybe things get a little more. I don't know what to call it. I don't want to say organized, but yeah, take it
yeah,
away.
yeah. So so we're on the Bone Disney deal. Once again, we were put on cordon for that mission. We were brought out there a few times when they were doing certain things, especially the actual clearing of the building itself and going in there. But I remember seeing, like, at one point we had to the side of Bone Disney, there was this house that we called the White House, because that's what it was. It was a White House on stilts, and they were like, "Oh yeah, there's bad dudes in there." So they were trying to hit this with like everything. They had shot tank rounds at it. They had shot tow missiles at it, and this house just wasn't blowing up. It wasn't. Nothing was happening with it. I think at one point they even dropped a JDAM on this house, and it just like still there, right?
Right.
We're just like, holy shit, this thing's invincible. And then somebody got the bright idea to take a Bradley and use the 25 millimeter cannon and shoot the stilts out from under that house, and then it
Okay.
fell and cracked. You know?
Hey, sometimes you just gotta reverse engineer that thing.
Yeah, yeah. But again, that's more of this idea of like you're seeing everything, and it seems like everybody's just flying by the seat of their pants for all of this, right?
Right.
And I go up there to the top of Bone Disney after we took it, and First Sergeant Colella was up there, and it was me, Sergeant Haas, and First Sergeant Colella, and he's like surveying the area and saying, "Oh, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that." And we had somebody like comes up to the top of that roof, and they start doing like 3 to 5 second rushes across the top of this roof, and you're just like, what are you doing? And they're like, there could be snipers up here, and it's like, we have the whole area like locked down now. We're fine, right? Like just chill. And we do that. And over the next few weeks, that's when we start trying to like basically turn this place into a home. And from that point, that's when we got a lot of the flack. That's when we started having the increase in activity, getting mortared, getting shot at. And I remember, we had like three different teams of people in our platoon, and it's like you basically had like a team that was building up all your sandbags, and we even had guys like cutting rebarb and doing all kinds of crazy stuff to set up defenses. Then you
Mm-hmm.
had the guys who were on, security for the different OPs there, and then you had like your downtime team where it's like, okay, you can take a couple hours to sleep, and you would just like rotate between these. So there would be times where it's like you would wake up and to gunfire or mortars, and then go out there and just start like digging and putting in sandbags and stuff while other people are fighting and shooting. And then they're like, okay, you're done with that, now go get on the gun, and then you're just picking up where like the last gunner left off.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a big like push that definitely got us like tired and all of this. And all of this kind of like happened in spurts over a period of, I want to say, like 4 months. And it wasn't until like I want to say at least 3 months, 4 months, where it's like I realized like, okay, I haven't had a hot meal in 4 months. I haven't had a shower. I haven't like gone back to the fob, and everyone is just like living this like complete, like almost like this barbarian style lifestyle, right? We have no electricity, we have no running water. Everything that we're getting is coming back in and back from the fob. The only guys who are going back to the fob are like if you get put on a refit, a refit detail or something like that. And sometimes maybe you can convince that guy to be like, hey, if I give you some money, can you get some cigarettes or this or that? Uh,
Yeah.
we had like the tank guys with us, so we could go talk to the tank guys and be like, hey, here's my card. Can you go to the PX and get me some dip or get me some smokes?
Yeah.
Shit like that. But yeah, I mean, it was just this time where you're not living anything that is even close to civilization, and you're living out amongst the people as well. So you're seeing like Iraqis, move about during the day and how they act and interact and these like cultural things that are going on as well. And I think like it was a good it was a good experience and a good perspective to get, because you would go back to the fob, and then a lot of people who weren't out there and didn't see these things were making like wild accusations or like saying just things that weren't true, and you're like, you don't know, you're not out there.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense, and that's why information should go from top to bottom and bottom to top, and you can't build a accurate picture of what's going on if people aren't sharing.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. So Bone Disney, you guys get that up and running. You're following the guidance of Joe Petraeus. You send it out of, hey, get amongst the people. So across the battalion, you got
Oh,
companies
and
all
I
set.
I got a good story with Petraeus.
Okay. All right. So share away.
Yeah, so we I want to say it was about month 3 into having Bone Disney up and running, that he actually came out to the cop to see what we were doing, right? And I'm up there on one of the OPs, and I'm like just sitting there doing guard, and Petraeus comes in, and I see this just huge convoy. It almost reminded me of like the convoys they would have in North Korea for Kim Jong Il or diplomats and stuff like that coming across the long road. Like he just had all these Humvees and all this stuff. I was like, holy crap! Like this dude has more security than the president, right?
Yeah.
and and he comes there. He's doing whatever downstairs, and I'm just the whole time I'm like sitting there thinking like, please don't come up to my OP on my guard shift. Please don't.
Please don't come
I just don't
upstairs.
want to
Please
deal
don't
with
come
this.
upstairs. Please don't come upstairs.
Yeah, yeah. And sure as shit, he comes up to my OP. I'm like, oh, crap. Like, what do I do?
He's gonna
And
ask me my general orders.
yeah, yeah. Like, what? Crap. And so I just kind of like nervously start explaining stuff. I'm like, oh, here's the range card for this OP. I drew it, like I did this, and
Yeah.
oh, here's this, and then he's like getting closer to where I am, and I point at one of the buildings next to us, and I was like, oh yeah, and we like get shot at like almost every day from that building over there.
Okay.
and, and he only has his soft cap on, and he like lifts his head down and starts to put it like under my blast shield to look at the house that I just said we get shot at like every day. And all of a sudden I freak out because I'm thinking like, oh god, now it's General Petraeus is gonna get shot on Private Russell's OP. And I'm gonna get put in Fort Leavenworth or whatever. And so I grab him by his IBA and I pull him back, and I was like, "Sir, you don't have a hardcover on." And his like entourage like throws me to the ground, and they're like, kicking at me and everything, and like, you just touched a general. I'm like, oh my god,
What's going on?
yeah, what's going on? And then he like pushes him away and everything, and he grabbed my hand, pulls me up, and he's like, it's all right, son, you can always check up. And I was like, okay, and I opened my hand, and he had given me a coin. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, cool. And then he leaves, and I think we had Captain Adam by that time, and he had come upstairs, and he was just like, Russell, what did you do? And I was like, I don't know, sir, but I got a coin. And he just shook his head and walked off.
Uh, Look, yeah, so no, that's a good story, and that sounds about right for Joan Petraeus. And yes, the only dude rolling around in a soft cap and so
Yeah,
on. But yeah, so you had Captain Austin, the new commander at that point.
yeah.
And then from there, so did you spend much time down at the IP station?
Uh, we would go there occasionally. Mostly, like, Troublemaker Platoon was pretty mobile, especially doing the missions combined with the tanks and all of that. We were with Sergeant Malo's his tank platoon, and
Okay.
yeah, they had nicknamed themselves the Blood Angels. So we're with them, and they're rolling around doing. Most of it was cordon, but we would still do a lot of route clearance and route security,
Mm-hmm.
especially with EOD and things like that. At that point, I got really lucky, and I got to gun on a tank when one of our gunners went back for leave because his wife, had a baby. And then I got to be one of the only infantry guys that shot the main gun round in the tank. So that was fun.
Yeah, and that also just highlights the scarcity when people start. I mean, not only because we lost a lot of people from the battalion to go be on the MIT teams, then from there, um, leave starts and
Yeah,
people start going on leave. And now I mean, the tanks were already rolling without loaders for the most part. So now it's like, hey, we're missing a gunner. So,
yeah,
hey, Russell, come gun today and get him.
yeah. And prior to all that too, I had been doing my extra duty as well. So like the only times that I was going back to the fob was to do extra duty, and you're stirring flaming shit back there on Fob Warhorse, and then
Yeah.
and then you finish up with that, and then they're like, okay, time to go back out in sector, and you're just like, man, I don't get a break, like,
Yeah.
and it was at that point that I think I definitely like toned it down. I was like, okay, maybe I should stop with some of the knuckleheadedness.
Mm, okay. All right.
You're like, all
So
right,
the I hate to say, but the system finally wore you down.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
The
mean,
establishment finally won.
yeah, yeah. Well, like I said, I think a lot of the antics that we were up to back on before we deployed were due to just the amount of stress, anxiety, lack of direction, and and also at the same time you're being pumped up every day with high adrenaline, being like, you're going to go overseas and you're about to fight a war,
Yeah.
and you've got a bunch of teenagers and barely legal adults who are just don't know what to do with all this, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So the hate to say, but the minutia continues, and then
Yeah,
the surge rolls on where we get 520, and then rest of the third striker shows up. So kind of leaning
mhm.
towards Arrowhead Ripper. Anything stands out besides tackling General Petraeus, or anything stand out that you'd like to share about, like leading up to Arrowhead Ripper?
Yeah. So I was in one of the ambushes in Tahrir. I was on the patrol that we lost Doc Nguyen, and it was at that one that I got shot one of the Iraqi army members, he got shot, and another one killed. Obviously, Doc Nguyen, he was killed. Lieutenant PJ got shot, and Sergeant Crowley and our brand new Private Rivera, they got shot up as well. So, we had been doing a lot of the infamous presence patrols, which I was told later in my military career wasn't a thing, but we certainly did a lot of them.
I don't know. I
The
don't know
presence
who says
patrol,
that's
not
not
a
a
presence
thing. Because
patrol,
yeah,
yeah,
that was pretty legit. I remember that being very yes. So yes.
yeah,
All right. Regardless of changing terminology, because someone
yeah,
always wants to do that. But you're doing a presence patrol.
yeah. And we were out there in Tahrir, and it was I think it was right as 520 had gotten there, because we got support from 520 and the tanks. Once that went down, and they had just planned that ambush really well. There was a PKM machine gunner who was about 3 stories up, and they had locked all the gates down this one alley, and so when they shot at us, it had caused us to move around, and we were trying to come up the backside of the building. And I remember Sergeant Feely and Lieutenant PJ arguing over the GRG, and where we could try to assault this building from. And once we went up that alley, we got about halfway up, and then you could see the building that this guy had shot at us from. And it was like at that point you realized, like, oh shit, he's got eyes on us, and he did. And it was basically like shooting fish in a barrel. And I fired back with my saw. I dumped like the full drum to start with, and then I got hit in the leg. I didn't even realize it at the time. The Iraqi army guy in front of me, he got his head blown off in front of me, and then it's just pure chaos going from there.
Right.
Once the tanks came in, they started shooting main guns at the round that at the building. That was good, and that caused that guy to either move away. I don't know if he was hit. Later they people told me that they did capture him, but from that point, I was evac'd out to Fob Gabe, and then at Fob Gabe, they basically patched us up, and they were like telling us, Sergeant Crowley and Rivera, they were going to get shipped back to Germany. They were just too injured at that
Mm-hmm.
time. And then they told us, Doc Nguyen died, and Lieutenant PJ, I guess he just took a small round to the ribs, so they patched him up and sent him back. And they were trying to decide, I guess, what to do with me. And I was like, I want to go back to the line. Like, I can go back, and they were like, no, we'll send you out to Blad and I guess see what happens from there. So I was like, okay, I got my Israeli wrap, on my leg. I go up to Balad, and so, that's where I actually almost died. It wasn't even, back there getting shot at and all of that stuff going on, because they pulled me into Balad, and they had either a medic or an aide come up, and I've got my Israeli wrap, and he comes up with the trauma shears, and he just cuts off my Israeli wrap. And I was like, what the hell are you doing, man? It's wrapped, for a reason. And he's like, oh, I have to look at the wound. I was like, okay, it's a bullet wound. And he's like, yeah, it's a bullet wound. And then I was like, well, can you rewrap that, please?
Yeah.
Or give me something to rewrap it? And he was like, oh, you're going to be in surgery real soon. Don't worry about it. I'm like, okay. And going to be in surgery real soon turned into 4 hours of just waiting.
Wow.
And each time a nurse would come by, even though it's in the summer, or I think at the time it's May, but it's still 100 degrees outside. Each time a nurse is coming by, I'm like, hey, I'm really cold. Can you get me a blanket? And then they're putting another hot blanket on top of me. And finally, when this nurse comes by and I ask for another blanket, and I have 10 of these hot blankets on me, she's like, something's not right. And then she's like, what are you here for? I was like, I got shot. And she's just like, pulls back the blankets, and I'd been bleeding out, and I'm going through like hypovolemic shock.
Wow.
And yeah, and they're like, we got to get him to surgery now. Oh my God. And then I just start laughing hysterically at that point. I lost it. And I remember people just looking at me weird as they were like wheeling me back, to stitch me up and all this stuff. And I'm just laughing. And then the doctor comes up and he's like, hey man, don't worry. We're going to give you anesthesia and everything's going to be good. If there's a bullet inside you, do you want to keep it? And I was like, yeah, sure. And he's like, all right. He's like, you'll be out in 3, 2, and bam, I was out.
Right.
So, yeah, did all that. And then I woke up, and that being in Balad was an interesting experience.
Yes, that's where that's a mind-blowing experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're just like, this place is so weird and so different from everything else that is going on in Iraq. Like, I don't even understand this, because it's
I
like a
don't
city.
I don't know if you timed it, but I think it was a 10-minute flight. But we would talk about that as like, a 10-minute flight, you were in Warhorse where, it was Warhorse. And then a couple
Yeah,
minutes later you'd be at own Disney. But yeah, Anaconda, like you said, it was its own city, Sassanite, that big PX, Air
yeah,
Force people walking around without weapons. You're just like, what is
yeah,
going on? Where
yeah,
am I?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I got really lucky. The nurse who was actually in charge of my recovery was actually Corporal Hepler's. He was in our company, Corporal Hepler's wife. So
Okay.
yeah, so like there was a connection there, and it was really cool because as soon as I woke up, she was there, and she was like, "Do you need anything?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just need some cigarettes." And she was like, "Okay, don't worry." And then she came back and gave me like a full carton of cigarettes and a Playboy mag. I was like, "Thank you so much! Like this is awesome."
Yeah.
Yeah, it, she was cool, and I thanked her and Corporal Hepler, when I got back too. But yeah, like you said, you're doing that, and even the medical part of it was its own like thing as well, because you had the pilots coming in doing medevacs and all kinds of stuff on a regular basis, and they're sitting around like in their own little world, smoking and joking, and I would go outside to the front and smoke there at the smoking area, and at one time like they had the big alarms going off for like, oh, mortars are coming, and
Yeah.
like half the time they weren't. Half the time it was like maybe something happened on the outside, or maybe somebody shot something off somewhere and they're just like freaking out for nothing. And this seemed to be one of those times, and I'm sitting there with right next to this Marine, and he has a blood transfusion box in his hand. Like he's smoking, and he's getting like blood like transfused through this fucking box.
Hmm.
and and we're just sitting there smoking, and this E7, she's like running out, and she's got all these people, and she gets them like under one of those like concrete bunkers, and she starts yelling at us, and she's like, get under the bunker, get under the bunker. And we just look at her, and we're like, no, like we're just sitting here smoking. And then she comes up to us, and she's furious. She's like, next time, I tell you to do this or that, you need to listen to me and get under the bunker. And she's like, you can get in trouble. And I was like, yeah, let's go inside, and let's actually talk to the sergeant major and tell him that you didn't assist the 2 wounded soldiers to the bunker, and see how that goes.
Yeah.
And she was like, and I was like, yeah, just leave us alone. And she walked inside, and I didn't hear from her again. So I was just like, this place is absolutely batshit insane.
Hmm. Okay, so now what happened with you? Did you stay? Did you go back to Warhorse? Did you?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
so I got lucky. It was actually our brigade sergeant major who he came down to Balad because I guess shortly after I got shot, the I believe it was the captain in 520 got killed,
Okay.
and so he came down there for that, and I was able to convince him to tell the medical team to let me go, and they released me, and I took a bird back to Warhorse and came back, and I want to say it was like a week or less that I was back on the line.
Okay. All right. So get shot, you recover. Week later, give or take a day, you're back at Bone Disney.
Yeah. Or
Wow.
no, I'm back on Warhorse.
Oh, okay.
You know, they keep me back there, and at that point, they tried to do some tower guard with me. Like, all right, maybe you can go do some tower guard, and then we ended up having at that time. I don't remember if it was the Georgians or Ugandans yet, you know,
Yeah. Yep.
but I want to say it was the Georgians who were there, and one of them like had some sort of incident on the tower where like they started like a small brush fire under the tower to try to like signal or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, after that I came back and told first sergeant, I was like, I think I'm just gonna use my dead man profile and I don't want to do like I don't want to be around these people. And he was like,
Okay.
I understand.
All right.
And
So,
yeah,
what did
so
you end up doing for the rest of the time, or what did you do after that?
well, I definitely kept myself busy. We had gotten all the up armor and all that blast armor and stuff. I'd helped a couple people put that on the Bradleys and tanks and stuff like that. And it was shortly after that that I ended up taking my mid tour leave. You know,
Okay.
so I go back there. I take my mid tour leave, and I had actually ended up getting in a wreck on mid tour leave because my car had been impounded, and I had kept
Oh,
my vehicle at Private Berg's house, and he was he had gotten shot. He's one of the first casualties, and I guess his wife just abandoned the vehicle, didn't tell anybody, so they towed it and impounded it. So I had to go take care of that, and it was as I pulled out of the impound lot, somebody T-boned me and destroyed the car. So
wow.
yeah, I was just like, oh my god, I'm catching it, from every different angle. So I was actually like really like excited to come back because I was like, okay, back here is I don't even know what to make of this, being back in the states and
Yeah.
having this small respite. Yeah, it's kind of cool, but at the same time, most of the time I'm worried about what's going on over there. You don't have like social media or things like that going on. There's no real way to communicate with people. So the whole time you're just worried. So you're like, okay, this really isn't much of a leave, you know?
Right.
And so I got back, and as soon as I got back, I think that's when we kicked off with Arrowhead Ripper and going through clearing out Tahrir, clearing out Bakuba, in Baritz, and that was another like nonstop haul and push through there, and a lot of it's just a haze. You're just going through each day, doing patrols. Getting told, okay, we're gonna go over here and hold this place down while somebody else does something else, and being the guy on the ground, you're just like, yep, it does what it's told at this point. Like this is how it's been, and whatever,
Yeah. This is what we're doing today. So, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I describe it as like it's weird. It's like this. It's the most like free I've ever been in my life. You know,
Yeah.
because you don't have this level of responsibility over anything, right? You wake up, you do whatever jobs need to get done throughout the day, like business as usual, and like you're out at the cop, so there's certain details and duties that need to get done, like gas up this generator, or like go out here and do this or that. But and then you're like, okay, today we're on patrol day. Tomorrow we're gonna be doing OP guard. The next day we're gonna do this. And by the time I got back, they were in a rhythm to where you would stay out 30 days at the cop, and then you would go back 2 days for refit. So it's like, okay, and now we know I can at least go back to the Fob Warhorse and drink one of those green bean coffees, and get a
Yeah.
haircut, and you know,
Restock the cigarettes and
yeah,
but
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I know that's crazy and some people won't like want to or can't understand that. But yeah, like you were saying, it gets very freeing as in you don't have to worry about you have to cook any meals. You knew what
yeah,
time chow would be if there was chow or it was
yeah,
all those things. Like it was very regimented.
yeah, yeah, and even more so, like there's not this like stress of society. You're not sitting here worrying like, oh, I've got to pay the bills. Oh, I've got to do this. Oh, like
Just gotta survive.
yeah, yeah. You're like, okay, we sit around all day, we smoke, we play spades. If we get attacked, we'll respond to that. If not, we're just sitting here waiting for the next detail, and then you just do that, and you're living out of a rucksack. Everything that you need for the next 30 days is in that rucksack, and maybe you have like a book or a couple personal possessions, but other than that, like everything's in there, and you're just focused on that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so um, after that kind of time period concludes, is there anything else? I mean, what would you want to share about redeployment or is there anything else that really sticks out for you in your Bakuba experience?
At the end of the day, there is a lot you can go through and be like, okay, we had Seeger die. He drowned in that Bradley in the Tigris, and our company, I think, took some of the highest casualties while we were there. We had 12 guys die on this deployment, and that's another like issue as well, because you get into this mindset where these kind of things, death, injury, and all of this become normal,
Mm,
and it's even to this day, like I can't. It feels weird, like if you go to funerals and things like that with people, and you see how like emotional they are, and you're not that level of emotional because it's just something that you've dealt with, right? And I don't know. There was even a point that it's like by the time you start to get to like guy 6 who dies, guy 7 who dies, you even start getting angry because you're like, okay, that's one less dude to do details around here. So now we're gonna have to do an extra hour on tower guard, or we're gonna have to do an extra hour on patrol, and this and that, and then you feel bad for feeling that way, but at the same time, like you were saying, we're undermanned, understaffed, and you're still doing all these missions, and you're just like, okay, I'm worn down, right?
yeah, and that really sums up the Bakuba experience of you can't occupy a city with not enough people.
Yeah,
And, there was a lot of good intentions and a lot of things that people would have liked to do. But first, you had to clear it and make it safe. Then you had to hold it. Well, you can't clear and hold if you just don't have the people. And like you said, I mean, when the casualty started and you're just talking about one company with the KIA, but now you look at the entire battalion and the sheer volume, and then the injuries. People were going home
yeah,
with life changing injuries. I mean,
yeah,
luckily, luckily you survived your hospital visit because, like you said, you almost died at the hospital, not from the actual wound or the point of injury. But
yeah,
how many other people didn't come back after being wounded or major
yeah,
life changing injuries?
yeah. I mean, and the with every casualty, there's always, finger pointing. There's always things that go
Mm,
back and forth, with those kind of things as well. So that also kind of like rocks your unit cohesion, because you have people who are supposed to be in charge and maybe weren't as in charge as they were supposed to be, and then you have other people who made decisions that other people don't agree with, and like I think again it goes back to that not having any specific like unit mission or any sort of like real direction and control over the situation and the area that like really fermented a lot of that.
yeah, and you brought up a really sour point, and like you said, it was the Monday quarterbacks where,
Yeah,
you know, every injury, every casualty, there was a 15-6. So you had the official investigation. Then you had everybody else that wanted to question things or point, like you said, point the fingers. And it was always just, it built the animosity, it built resentment, then it became the us versus them. And then when you, like you're saying, it's
yeah,
happening within your own organization where you're ripping each other apart because you're being questioned.
yeah. And I mean, it definitely goes higher than all that too, because we had like the concerned local nationals that they were doing at the time,
Mm,
and
yes.
like our cop was one of the points that they would come in and get paid, and you're seeing like your lieutenant pay these guys like more money than you're making, and it's
Yeah.
U.S. dollars. And then at the same time, these guys are just acting like pure criminals and running around and being an organized gang. They're out,
Hmm.
starting fights with the Iraqi army and the Iraqi police. They got in a firefight and killed like both of them at one point. And then you don't trust the local organizations as well. I think in Bakuba we went through, I want to say, 12 different Iraqi police chiefs because they were all dirty, you know? And so like you have that going on as well on top of it. And so yeah, it's just a feeling of pure chaos, and like at the end of the day, the only place that you feel like safe and at least somewhat okay is your individual squad, your platoon, and from there you have like no, you know, eyes view on anything else that's going on. You're like, I just have to keep my blinders right here, focused here, because if I don't, I'm gonna like, I'm gonna lose it.
Yeah. So as we all come home and, guess you could say look in hindsight. So earlier we were talking about you are an author, graphic author. So,
Yeah,
but what else or how has Bakuba affected your life and put you on the trajectory that you're on?
yeah. So you know, after I had two different time periods in the military. I got out in 2008 and tried my hand at the civilian world, and then went back in 2012.
Okay.
And really and truly, getting out in 2008 was probably the biggest like eye opener on how all of this was going to get received, what kind of implications this was going to have, and things like that were going on. I got out. I was like, okay, I'll just use my GI Bill, go to college. Everybody keeps saying like, do this, have a plan, something, and I'm like, all right, sure, go back to my hometown and go to college. That's my plan. But you go back, and then you're trying to find work. You're trying to integrate back into the civilian life. And at that time, we didn't have all these like different programs and things like that for guys getting out. It was just like, oh, you don't want to be in the army anymore. Later, bye. if if you're lucky enough to deal with the VA and have fun with that, like whatever, you know. And the whole joke in the military for the longest, still probably to this day, is, you know, if you're an infantry guy, your two jobs on the outside are going to be cop and janitor. That's it, right? That's all
Yeah.
you're good for. And I was just like, okay, I'll go get my EMT. People say medical is really good to get into, and as I'm working in the workforce, I keep getting this like feedback from people where it's like, okay, well, you're just a 22, 23-year-old kid. Like, you don't know shit. You're
Hmm.
young, whatever. And you're like, I just spent a year and a half in the most dangerous place in the world, made it out. You know, I was in charge of weapons, equipment, people. You know, I was given responsibilities and tasks that, like, nobody working here at, like, this warehouse or this, you know, retail store would ever be, you know, charged with.
Yeah.
And I'm just a 23-year-old kid who doesn't know shit. Okay, right? You know, and it's that um it's that idea that I think has really caused a lot of guys, especially enlisted dudes, to, you know, that's where you get this like 22 a day suicides and things like that going on, is because we don't recognize the things that we do in the military that have significant real world certifications and, you know, certifiable skills that actually you do over there. They don't get recognized, and then you get out and you don't have a floor to step out on, right? So if you don't have a base, a stable base to step out when you get out of the military, yeah, you're gonna fall over, and, you know, you're gonna keep going down from there. I was lucky enough that I had a strong, you know, family unit and friends, and, you know, shortly after I got married, I had a kid. You know, things like that were going on, that kind of kept me grounded.
Hmm.
But, you know, I could easily see the stories, where we had guys who, you know, drank themselves to death, or, you know, other things that are going on. And it's because you get out and you're told, like, yeah, everything you did is worthless. It doesn't mean anything to the civilian market economically and labor wise. You're, you know, worthless. So whatever, right? And then at the same time, you've got people with, you know, yellow ribbons on their cars being like, support the troops. And you're like, okay, well, can you give me a good job making money and, you know, have health care or something like that? And they're like, ooh, that's a bridge too far. No.
Yeah. Yeah. Support. No, I mean, that's a very good point. And luckily, you know, SFL tap or whatever it's going to be called nowadays, or I guess it is SFL tap, but you know,
Right.
it's gotten better. But yes, you go from, you know, warfighter, nation builder, all those things like you're saying, and you come back to janitor, policeman, and oh, by the
Yeah.
way, policeman, you still got to do all these other things. I mean, so yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely tough, and I would counter and say it's not just a enlisted problem because you know you have officers, you have others who you go from, hey, I was in charge of a 100 person or 200 person company, and they're like, oh, that's great. You know, we need a swing shift manager at QT, and by the way, these floors better stay clean. And
Yeah. Yeah. And, yeah, you know, I understand that. My, I guess, perspective is all, you know, enlisted and lower enlisted. And it really wasn't until my second enlistment, and I finally, you know, made my NCO, sergeant, all that good stuff, where I started to actually see these things and notice, like, okay, you know, we're doing combat lifesaver. That is a beat for beat exact same course as EMTB. You know,
mhm.
if guys could get certified for EMTB, like that would be something to have when you leave. You know, the medics who are in, I don't understand why a combat medic, when they get out of the military, they're not paramedic qualified. That's insane to me. You know, the level of experience and training that you have and your 4 years in the military is more than enough to certify you as a basic paramedic, you know? And
Well,
it's all the way. It's not just, you know, infantry. It's all the way across the board. You see these guys working in signal that they don't get the appropriate certifications for their jobs. They're not getting their like net plus, security plus, A plus certifications, and you know these guys. If you're an NCO in the military, you've had Six Sigma lean training. Everybody should be, you know, a green belt at least in Six Sigma, and that's a huge corporate, you know, little thing to have if you go trying to do business management and working for corporations. And then infantry guys, you know, your security certifications. They have federal security certifications like WPPS and all these other kind of stuff. And you're like, why don't we get that from our job? Like this is what we do, you know. So to me, it seems like if they would just correspond your actual experience to the current federal certifications that already exist, you would have people who would be able to take care of themselves when they get out of the military. You know, you could go walk on to a federal security job and be like, hey, yeah, I was 4 years infantry and have, you know, 2 years combat time. Can I join your, you know, security group?
yeah, well, that's where talking about these things, bringing awareness, that's where it helps. Because I will tell you, it's gotten better.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always room for work, but just the simple, 88 mics and CDLs. I mean,
Hmm.
that's a
Yeah.
reality where they have bridged that gap. Where now, yes, you have to put a little effort. You can't just say, "Oh, I was an 88 mic," and someone hands you a CDL,
Yeah.
but if you go through the process before you actually leave service, you can leave with your CDL. So
Yeah.
this is where having these conversations, bringing up these points, and then just continuing these conversations is how change happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you want to plug your writing, your creative side here, or
Yeah, absolutely. If you want the whole story from my perspective on Bakuba, I wrote a book. It's called Troublemakers: The Greatest Dog and Pony Show in Iraq. Blue Ear Books is the publisher that published it, but you can get it on Amazon. And again, it's, you know, from a lower enlisted point of view of, you know, just a young man going through this event. I took a lot of notes after Iraq, and I used those to kind of like, you know, tell this story. And I know a lot of guys that went through this that can't talk about it or have difficulties talking about it. And so, you know, I felt since I maybe it's that background that I have from my
Mhm.
younger years with theater and art and things like that that allow me to process these things and talk about them. So I felt like I should do it, you know, for those guys, right? Like give some sort of voice, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And it's also therapeutic. I mean,
Yeah,
art therapy is just getting it out there. So that's good,
yeah.
great
My
way for you to get the story out there.
Yeah, and I publish a comic on a platform called Global Comics with a X. I think I sent you both of the links for those. It's called Tales of Nihilism, and that's more of my story uh, about the struggles of like I'm using it as a metaphor for being a veteran struggling to re-enter, you know, society. And I tell it through this story of a guy, a normal dude who lives in a world with superheroes and supervillains, and it shows just how like insane, awful, and crazy it would be to be a normal person.
Mm, okay. That's awesome. But we'll definitely have to include those in the bio and get you a little push for that. And the way I kind of like to wrap these things up is always kind of leave the floor of any final thoughts, any just things that you want to make sure to get off your chest, but just kind of leave it as a here's your chance. So
Yeah,
please take it away.
absolutely. You know, at the end of the day, any thoughts aside, political or generalizations about Iraq, what happened, and all of these kind of things. It's it's this time period in your life that is both like the best and worst at the same time. It's the most free, but also most constrained time of your life as well. You live in this juxtaposition, and for everybody who went through it, there's something that we all have in common, and that we all take with us throughout our life. And I don't sit here and try to say like I'm a hero or I did anything great over in Iraq, but I was a part of it, and it was special to be a part of it. And I appreciate everybody that went through it with me. And I still talk to people to this day who went through that with me. So it's, yeah, it's just undescribable.